Hey guys, it's Lordcas and What Ifs here, and today we are back with What If Deku had a void quirk. Now let's get to the what if. Calling my quirk odd is an understatement. Dormant for 15 years and giving my body near complete physical immunity, as well as immunity to heat and most dangers, is not something that normally happens. Sure, the hero Captain Celebrity has a form of immunity, but he can still be hurt if he is not careful. As far as I can tell, the only weak point I have is my face, and that is still incredibly durable. I.e. falling down a flight of stairs. It is odd, ever since my quirk awoke 2 months ago the dreams have stopped for the most part. 2 months since All Might shot my personal dreams in the back of the head in a field of flowers. 2 months since I almost died to a slime monster. But, personally, I think I'm doing fine. Well, as okay as a kid who was quirkless and started sprouting horns and growing a reinforced black carapace on my skin can be. Sadly, the whole school and Katsuki problem hasn't changed much. Well, other than he is even more volatile than usual. The only people that have backed down are the larger portion of the student body. However, that only happened after a dumbass with a strength enhancement quirk punched me in the gut and broke his hand. I guess he didn't think the kid that tanked Katsuki's explosions could take his fist. And now that the carapace is covering my body completely, an assortment of things have started to happen. Katsuki was pissed. Deku, the little pebble that followed him around. The quirkless runt, the weakling and punching bag he had used for years. Had a quirk. It was impressive too, able to take an explosion and not even have a burn. That in of itself pissed him off. But what made Katsuki seethe with hatred, was that the fucker tried to hide it all. The audacity of the son of a bitch had to hide a quirk. How long had he been hiding it? A month? 2? A full fucking year? Was Deku hiding it from him the whole time? He had harassed the fucker for years, and yet the fucker hid his quirk. He hid it like a coward. So what else was he supposed to do than follow the fucker home and teach him a lesson? Boom. Fear spiked through Izuku as he was launched down the alley he was passing. He knew his skins would be okay, but this was his last clean uniform. Sadly, it was now a destroyed uniform. He had skidded almost 20 feet from where he had landed, shredding and ripping any piece that was not already smoldering. When he finally slowed down from the explosion, he was surrounded by the muck of the alley. The dumpsters were piled high and there were puddles of substances here and there. The explosion didn't surprise Izuku. 2 months of good behavior from Bakugo was surprising in its own right. No, what surprised Izuku was the rage that flitted out of his heart. With each beat, the heat in him grew more and more. Sitting up almost hurt, not because he was flung down an alley, not because it was Bakugo, but because he would need to show his mother his now destroyed clothes. She did not need this, and by God has he grown tired of it. Is that all you got, Deku? Bakugo yelled at him with a sneer. The cold from the alley grew further as he stood up straight and stared down Bakugo. It reminded him of when he was 5 and used his body to protect a kid who was an average late bloomer from Bakugo. Only this time, it was different. That kid this time was behind Bakugo, much like all those he tried to help. And this time, he had a quirk. The moment Izuku stepped forward, Bakugo launched off the pavement with a defining bang. Where he once stood, the ground was cracked and scorched and the air was filled with thick dust, only for his punch to miss Izuku. Izuku, however, did not feel like getting hit and decided to return the favor. A swift punch and Bakugo was thrown into the wall of the alley. A sickening snap and an audible drip of a liquid alerted all those around that something did not go well. As the smoke faded from the alley, the onlookers were paralyzed in fear. Standing tall as a pillar of darkness was Izuku, the wimpy loser they all once knew. Had knocked their leader flat on his back, bleeding and beaten with one hit. But that was not the worst part. Where his bright green eyes once were, 2 sockets of darkness stare back. A pale white mask had formed on Izuku's head. Where his horns had been growing stood 2 large horns of ivory. The sight caused the group to panic and run away in fear. No one had ever beaten Bakugo. Inside the mask, Izuku was astonished. He had meant to hit Bakugo but not send him flying. But it wasn't just his new strength that astonished him. In the mask, he could breathe, and for once, it wasn't difficult to. For years it was like someone had been choking him. For years it was hard to get in a breath when Bakugo would beat him to the point of not caring. But it was like the hands have never been there. The air smelled sweet from the bakery they were behind, and he could smell the trees and the park. He could hear the laughter of some friends and the bustling city life around him better than ever. He also could hear the dripping of Bakugo's blood, and his shuffling to attack. As Bakugo swung at him, he staggered and tripped himself up. But no matter how much Izuku dodged, Bakugo kept coming. With every step, the explosions grew louder and bigger. But with every explosion, Izuku's senses got sharper. He saw the slight twitches of Bakugo's arms as he shot off another eruption. He felt the heat wash over him and be absorbed and contained. But he also saw the crazed look in Bakugo's eyes, the look of a feral beast wanting to rip him into pieces. A small slip-up allowed Bakugo a punch, but it only shattered his own hand as Izuku leaned into the hit. A quick jab had finished the battle as Bakugo's already bleeding head was hit again, causing him to fall into a heap on the ground. 3 hits that had hit, and a lot that did not. 2 of them from Izuku and 1 from Bakugo. It was the fastest fight between them. It was also the first one Izuku won. Izuku felt the need to apologize to Bakugo, not for the ass-kicking, or the slight uniform damage he caused. It was more for not taking the fight all that seriously. Katsuki had obviously given it his all for how big the alley was. If it was bigger or he had more room to destroy, he could have done better. But Izuku was too occupied with the new part of his quirk. And the fact he couldn't speak with it didn't help. With a quick grab, he had hoisted Katsuki onto his shoulder. He needed to get him to the hospital, which meant the police would likely be called because one kid with skid-marked and burned clothing was carrying a bludgeoning victim. He was right about the police being called. After a quick check-up by the nurses, he sat in front of a police detective named Namosa Scouchy. The fear of Bakugo using the school's influence to pin him for the assault was staunched by hearing what the detective's quirk was. The questions themselves were easy to answer. Was Bakugo hit by a car? No. Was I a part of a house fire? No. How did we get the damage to ourselves? He attacked me, and I punched him twice. After a few more questions and answers were shared between the detective and Izuku, the detective gave him a card. This is a quirk gym card. Just call and they will get in touch with you, and considering how long your quirk was dormant, they will go hard on you to find out as much about your quirk as possible. Oh, thank you. Not a problem. Now let's take you home, kid, the detective said as he stood and walked to the door. His mother will be so angry. Or pass out. Thankfully his mom did not pass out from a police officer dropping him off at their apartment. The officer, with help from Izuku, told his mom what had happened and why he was being taken home by the police. When the police officer finally left their home, well, Izuku felt horrible. His mom was tearing and looked ready to hug him to death. He wished he had told her about the bullying. But what could they have done about it? Told the principal. Transfer him to another school. It's not like either of those options would have changed much. He would have been ostracized from any school. Shunned by anyone who found out he was quirkless. Izuku, we need to talk. That's it for video. I hope you enjoyed it. Till